Most owners try to cool their dog the same way they would cool themselves. They offer ice, they pour water over the dog, they shave the coat, they walk a little later than usual, and assume that if the sun is lower, everything is safe. And sometimes those choices help, but sometimes they miss the real problem because dogs do not cool their bodies the way people do. When you get hot, your body can sweat across the surface of your skin. That sweat evaporates and it helps pull heat away from your body. But your dog does not have that same system working across the whole body. A dog has some sweat glands in the paw pads, but that is not enough to control body temperature on a hot summer day. For dogs, the main way to release heat is through panting, that open mouth, that fast breathing, that tongue hanging out. It is not just a sign that your dog is tired. It is one of the main ways your dog is trying to stay alive in the heat. And this is where many summer mistakes begin. Because if a dog is panting hard, people often think he just needs a little water or he just needs to rest for a minute. But panting is not magic. It works best when there is enough airflow for moisture to evaporate, and it becomes less effective as humidity rises. If the air is hot, still, and humid, panting becomes less effective. If the dog is wearing the wrong muzzle and cannot open his mouth properly, panting becomes less effective. If the dog is standing on hot pavement, walking in direct sun, or sitting in a parked car, panting may not be enough. And that is why keeping a dog cool in summer is not just about giving water. It is about understanding where heat is coming from, how your dog releases it, and which common cooling tricks may not work the way people think. Let's start with one of the most confusing questions. Should you give your dog cold water or ice? You may have heard that cold water is dangerous for dogs in hot weather. You may have heard that ice can cause problems. You may have even heard that a hot dog should only drink room temperature water. But the truth is more nuanced than that. For a healthy dog on a normal summer walk, cool drinking water is usually fine. The real goal is simple. Your dog needs access to fresh water before he becomes desperate for it. The mistake is not offering water too early. The mistake is waiting until the dog is already overheated, exhausted, and gulping as if he has gone too long without it. On hot days, water should not be treated like a reward at the end of the walk. It should be part of the walk. Bring a portable bowl. Stop in the shade. Offer fresh water regularly, and give your dog opportunities to drink throughout the walk. Ice is similar. For many dogs, licking an ice cube or enjoying a frozen treat can be safe and helpful. But there are two things to watch. First, some dogs do not lick ice gently. They bite and crunch hard pieces, which can be a risk for teeth. Second, ice should not become a way to force rapid drinking or replace common sense. If your dog is already showing signs of overheating, ice alone is not the solution. A frozen treat on the kitchen floor is one thing. A dog who is heavily panting, drooling, weak, confused, or unable to settle in the heat is something else. That dog does not need a cute summer hack. That dog may need active cooling and veterinary help. And this leads to another piece of advice many owners get wrong. Should you wet your dog down? Some people say never wet a dog in summer. Some people say only wet the paws. Some say only wet the belly. Some say never use cold water. But if a dog is overheating, water can be one of the most important tools you have. The key is knowing the difference between comfort cooling and emergency cooling. Comfort cooling is when your dog is warm but still acting normal. He is alert. He is responsive. He can walk normally. He can drink normally. He is not collapsing, wobbling, or acting confused. In that situation, you might help him by moving into shade or air conditioning, offering water, reducing activity, using airflow, or gently wetting areas like the belly, chest, groin, or paws. But emergency cooling is different. If your dog is showing serious signs of heat stress, you do not wait passively and hope he calms down. Modern veterinary guidance increasingly supports the idea: cool first, then transport. That does not mean delaying the vet. It means you begin cooling immediately while arranging veterinary care. For a young, healthy dog who has overheated after exercise, cold water immersion may be appropriate when it is available and safe. For older dogs, flat-faced dogs, dogs with medical problems, or dogs where immersion is not practical, applying water and combining it with airflow from a fan, breeze, or air conditioning can help remove heat. The important point is this: the water needs to be cooler than the dog, not boiling hot. not a warm, damp blanket trapping heat. Not a heavy, wet covering that blocks airflow. Water plus air movement is what matters, because evaporation helps pull heat away. So the problem is not simply water on the dog. The problem is using water in a way that traps heat instead of helping it leave. For example, covering a dog with a thick, wet towel and leaving it there can become a mistake if the towel warms up and blocks airflow. But wetting the dog and keeping air moving can be helpful. This is why simple rules like never wet your dog can be dangerous. They sound clear, but summer safety is not always clear. It depends on the dog, the temperature, the humidity, the coat, the situation, and whether the dog is merely warm or already in trouble. And the same principle applies to cooling products. Cooling vests and cooling mats can be useful, but they are not magic. And not every product that feels cold to your hand will necessarily keep your dog safer in every environment. Some cooling vests work through evaporation. They hold water and allow that water to evaporate gradually, helping remove heat from the dog's body. But evaporation depends on the environment. In dry conditions with good airflow, evaporative cooling can work well. In very humid conditions, evaporation becomes less efficient. And if a vest becomes warm, heavy, poorly ventilated, or begins trapping heat close to the body, it may stop helping the way you expect. So if you use a cooling vest, do not simply put it on your dog and assume the problem is solved. Touch it, check it, watch your dog. Is the vest still cool? Is your dog panting more or less? Can air move around the body? Is the dog comfortable wearing it? And most importantly, are you using the vest to support safer choices or to justify staying outside longer than your dog should? Because no cooling product can make extreme heat safe. The same is true for cooling mats. Some dogs love them. They stretch out on them immediately and choose to return again and again. Other dogs avoid them completely. That choice matters. A cooling mat should be an option, not a place your dog is forced to stay. If your dog prefers the cool tile floor, the shade beneath a table, or a spot near the air conditioner, that may tell you more about what feels comfortable to him than the price or technology of a product. The goal is not to make your dog use the cooling device you bought. The goal is to give your dog access to cooler places and allow him to move between them. And that idea of choice becomes especially important when we talk about something many owners do with the best intentions: shaving the coat. Every summer, people look at a dog with thick fur and think exactly the same thing. If I were wearing that coat, I would be miserable. So shaving it off feels logical. But a dog's coat is not simply a winter jacket. Different breeds have very different coat types, and those coats should not all be treated the same way. Some dogs have continuously growing hair that is routinely trimmed as part of normal grooming. Others have a double coat with a softer undercoat beneath protective outer hairs. And shaving a double coated dog is generally not recommended simply as a way to keep the dog cooler. The coat can help protect the skin from direct sunlight and sunburn, and shaving it may interfere with the way that coat normally grows back. But there is another myth here too. You may hear people say that a thick double coat works like perfect air conditioning and keeps a dog cool no matter how hot it gets. That is too simple. A coat can provide insulation and protection from solar radiation, but it does not make a dog immune to heat. A husky can still overheat. A golden retriever can still overheat. A German shepherd can still overheat. And a heavily matted coat can create additional problems by limiting normal coat function and making skin care more difficult. So the better summer question is not, should I shave all this fur off? It is, what kind of coat does my dog have, and how do I keep that coat healthy? Regular brushing can remove loose undercoat and help prevent mats. Professional grooming may be useful for some dogs, but shaving should not be treated as a universal summer cooling strategy. And while owners are looking at the fur on their dog's back, one of the greatest sources of summer heat may actually be underneath the dog's feet. The pavement. You have probably heard the advice to place the back of your hand against the ground for several seconds. It is a useful reminder, but it is not a perfect scientific test. The important point is much simpler. Pavement exposed to direct sunlight can become much hotter than the surrounding air. So a day that feels merely uncomfortable to you may be very different for a dog walking barefoot just a few inches above a heat radiating surface. And paw burns are not the only concern. A dog walking over hot pavement is also being exposed to additional heat from below while already trying to release heat through panting. This is why changing the time of your walk can matter more than buying another cooling product. Early morning is often safer than midday. Later evening may be better after surfaces have had time to cool. Shade matters. Grass can be more comfortable than asphalt. Shorter walks may be wiser than trying to complete the usual route. And sometimes the best summer walk is not really a walk at all. It may be a 5-minute bathroom break followed by mental enrichment indoors. That can feel strange to an owner who believes a good dog must be physically exhausted every day. But hot weather changes the rules. Your dog does not need to prove anything by finishing the usual 3-mile route, and neither do you. In fact, one of the most dangerous things about dogs is that some of them will keep going long after they should stop. A ball-obsessed dog may continue chasing. An excited dog may continue running. A highly driven dog may not make the safe decision for himself. He may look enthusiastic right up until his body is in trouble. So in summer, do not judge safety only by willingness. A dog who wants one more throw of the ball is not necessarily a dog who should have one more throw. Watch the breathing. Watch the pace. Watch how quickly your dog recovers after stopping. Notice whether the tongue is becoming unusually wide or deeply red. Notice excessive drooling. Notice if your dog starts searching desperately for shade, slowing down, refusing to continue, stumbling, vomiting, or seeming mentally distant. The earlier you notice a change, the more options you have. And there is one more detail that can quietly interfere with the dog's most important cooling mechanism: the muzzle. A dog cools primarily through panting, so any muzzle worn in hot weather must allow the dog to open his mouth widely enough to pant properly. A tight fabric muzzle that holds the mouth nearly closed is not appropriate for exercise or extended wear in the heat. For longer use, a properly fitted basket-style muzzle should provide enough space for the dog to open the mouth, pant, and ideally drink. This is not a cosmetic detail. If a dog cannot pant effectively, one of his main cooling systems has been restricted. And sometimes, the most dangerous summer environment is not the sidewalk, the park, or the beach. It is the place many dogs enter every day without hesitation. The car. A parked car can become dangerous far faster than many people realize. Even when the outside temperature does not feel extreme, the temperature inside a vehicle can rise rapidly. Cracking the windows does not make a parked car safe, and shade can disappear as the sun moves. And this is where people often make a very human calculation. I'll only be 5 minutes. But your dog does not experience those 5 minutes the way you do. Inside a hot car, there may be little meaningful airflow. Heat builds around the body. Panting becomes harder and harder to use effectively. And because dogs cannot cool themselves by sweating across most of their skin the way humans do, their options become dangerously limited. So the safest rule is also the simplest one. If your dog cannot come inside with you, leaving him at home may be the better choice. But cars are only one part of the risk, because 2 dogs can stand in the same place at the same temperature for the same amount of time, and one may be in far greater danger than the other. Flat-faced dogs, such as bulldogs, French bulldogs, and pugs, are at increased risk because their shortened airways can make effective breathing and cooling more difficult. Older dogs may have less ability to cope with heat. Very young dogs can also be more vulnerable. Dogs who are overweight may struggle more. Dogs with heart or respiratory disease may be at greater risk. Some larger dogs and certain large breeds may also face increased risk. Dogs with heavy coats and dogs who are not acclimatized to warm weather may need extra care as well. And there is another group owners sometimes overlook: the dogs who simply do not know when to stop. The Labrador, who would chase a ball until you put it away. The Border Collie, who remains focused on the game. The young dog who is too excited to rest. The dog who sees water, people, movement, and adventure and keeps going because everything is more interesting than the signals coming from his own body. Enthusiasm is not protection from heat. Sometimes it is a risk factor. And that is why one of the most important summer skills is learning to stop before your dog asks you to. Not when he collapses in the shade, not when he refuses to take another step, not when his legs become unsteady. Earlier, when the panting becomes harder, when recovery takes longer than usual, when your normally energetic dog begins slowing down, when he starts seeking shade repeatedly, when the tongue and gums look unusually red, when drooling becomes excessive. These can be early warnings that the body is struggling. More serious signs can include weakness, vomiting, diarrhea, confusion, loss of coordination, collapse, or seizures. At that point, this is no longer about making your dog comfortable. It is an emergency. Begin cooling and contact a veterinarian immediately. And this is where an old piece of advice can cost valuable time. Some owners have been told never to use cold water on an overheated dog because it will cause shock or close the blood vessels and trap heat inside the body. But current veterinary evidence does not support delaying effective cooling because of that fear. The principle is simple: cool first, transport second. That does not mean spending 30 minutes at home trying different remedies before calling the vet. It means beginning active cooling immediately while arranging urgent veterinary care. The method may depend on the dog and the situation, but the priority is the same. Start removing heat while getting professional help. Do not wrap the dog in wet towels and leave them in place. Once a towel warms up, it can reduce heat loss rather than improve it. And do not wait for your dog to see if he gets better when serious signs are already present. But perhaps the most important summer lesson begins much earlier than an emergency. It begins before the walk, before the ball is thrown, before the car ride, before your dog starts panting heavily. Look at the day from your dog's height. The air temperature is only one number. There is also humidity, direct sunlight, the temperature of the ground, the amount of shade, the airflow, your dog's age, his weight, his coat, his breathing, his health, and what he has been doing for the last 20 minutes. A comfortable summer day for one dog may be dangerous for another, and that is why there is no single temperature at which every dog suddenly becomes unsafe. Your dog is not a weather app. You have to watch the dog in front of you. Maybe that means moving the morning walk an hour earlier. Maybe it means carrying water instead of assuming your dog can wait until you get home. Maybe it means replacing a long afternoon walk with 5 minutes outside and a quiet enrichment game indoors. Maybe it means letting your dog choose the cool kitchen floor instead of insisting that he use the expensive cooling mat you bought. Maybe it means putting the ball away while your dog still wants one more throw. And maybe it means recognizing that keeping your dog cool is not really about finding one perfect trick. It is about removing the small sources of heat before they add up. A hot surface, direct sun, too much exercise, poor airflow, a muzzle that does not allow enough room to pant, a car that will only be unattended for a few minutes. One by one, each choice may seem small. Together, they can determine how safely your dog gets through the hottest days of the year. So this summer, do not wait for your dog to tell you he has had enough. Some dogs will tell you early. Some will slow down. Some will search for shade. Some will refuse to continue. But others will keep following you. Keep playing, keep running, keep trying, because dogs do not always make the safest decision for themselves. Sometimes that decision has to come from us. Give your dog water before he is desperate for it. Choose shade before he starts searching for it. End the game while he still wants to play. Shorten the walk before he begins to struggle. And learn what normal panting looks like for your own dog so you can recognize when something has changed. Because the best way to cool an overheated dog is to notice the heat before overheating ever begins.